John, thank you very much. I thought rather than do the normal death by viewfoil presentation that often comes up at the start of a conference, what I'd try and do this morning was just to talk to you a little bit about some of the things that we have learned through the London 2012 process, stretching back from the period when I first got involved in this back in 2004, just before the bid, through the winning of the bid and then the delivery of the games. And it has been quite a process. That said, I thought if there was one thing that really summed up the Paralympic Games to me, it was the moment actually during the opening ceremony when just after it had started, my phone went off. And it was a friend of mine from Army days who said, and it said very simply, very disappointed. And I scrolled on down the text, and he said, when the lights went down and the spotlight was on Stephen Hawking, I thought he was going to explain Paralympic classification. Instead of which he went for something easy like the theory of relativity. So with that thought, I suspect the first thing I should probably say is a huge thank you here to many people in this room who I know have been involved with the success of the last month. And looking out around here, I can see a lot of familiar faces who've played a part in this. This has been a truly great national effort. It's not been purely about the organising committee. There's been huge support from business, from the sponsors, from the country as a whole that's got behind it. Many of you are closely involved in that, and genuinely thank you very much for that indeed. What I thought I'd really do was just run through what we have already identified as the 7 major lessons that we think that we have learned from London 2012 in terms of how you deliver major world-class events. The first of these, and it's slightly unsung but is absolutely crucial, is cross-party political support. The night we won the bid in Singapore, John Goodbody, who was then the Times Olympic correspondent, tapped me on the shoulder and said, Hugh, what is the really good news for you tonight? And I said, well, presumably we just won a bid, John. And he said, no, absolutely not at all. In the last century, only one government has won a bid and delivered a Games. And if you look at that 7-year incubation between the bid and the delivery, it is almost a certainty in modern political cycles that the government will change. And if you look at what's happened to London, the government has changed, Labour government to coalition government. The mayor has changed. Almost all the local government leaders have changed. There has been huge political churn. So if you are going to deliver one of these events, and Olympic Games in particular, you have to get everybody signed up to doing it. And it is a remarkable statistic of London 2012 that the same 3 politicians leading for their respective parties started the second reading of the original bill at the end of July 2005, 2 weeks after we'd won the bid, and were still there for the third reading of the final amendment bill at the tail end of last year. Remarkable political stability, and this never became an issue in either general elections or mayoral campaigns. And I would argue that without that, you will almost never succeed, because if these things become the subject of political argument, then the tone very quickly disappears and all is lost. The second thing, and this is very, very clear when you talk to the IOC about the success of London, is to start early. We won on the 6th of July 2005. By the end of July in that year, we already had the bill in Parliament. The shadow ODA was up and running, the land was being acquired, and the process was very much underway. So that a year later, on the first anniversary of winning the bid, we were able to show extraordinary progress. If you think you can put this together in a few short years, running up to the opening ceremony, you will almost certainly be lost. And the success of starting early for London has been that the building has been done. It was completed on time and under budget. And that has given us almost a full year to test and refine and to test and refine and make sure that everything was ironed out. And we would not have had the sort of easy run of it that we have, at least publicly, over the Olympics if it had not been for the fact that we started early, therefore finished in good time, and were able to test and refine all the various venues. The third thing, and this is a problem you often encounter, is to be absolutely clear about the governance arrangements that drive a bid like this. We were very clear what government was required to do, and I would say that the 5 things that the IOC suggested to me have held pretty firm. Overall strategic direction, set the budget, sort out security and transport, and deal with the legacy, but do not attempt to build it yourself, to run it yourself, or to run all the venues in legacy mode, i.e. the role of the government is to stand behind and around the organising committee, but not to get in front of it. And it was, getting those roles and responsibilities absolutely clear at the outset is key to a successful bid. The IOC and the IPC do not want to deal directly with government. They want to deal with an organising committee. And it is absolutely vital that you get those roles and responsibilities clear early. It worked very well in London. Everybody knew that the ODA was there to build the venues, that LOCOG was there to run the show, and that the OPLC and now the LLDC is there to deliver the venues in legacy mode. Those clear divisions of responsibility have served us extraordinarily well. The 4th thing I would point to is that it is almost impossible for either the private sector or the public sector to deliver a project of this size. And remember, we were embarking on the largest building project, largest construction project anywhere in Europe. It's almost impossible for either of those 2 bodies to do this on their own. You have to form effective partnerships between the public and the private sector and then provide strong leadership. And we were uniquely fortunate in this country in having Sebastian Coe to do that, a man who had unimpeachable sporting credentials, political experience, a bit of business nous, and then enough sense to assemble a team to work for him that provided all the skills that he didn't directly have himself, and then to free him up to lead the project. But it is really important to get that meshing of public and private sector and then to provide the right leadership to the project if you're going to succeed. And then I thought I'd just finish by mentioning 3 things that have definitely helped us in the delivery of the project. The first of these, the 5th thing I was going to draw your attention to, is maintenance of momentum. It has driven all of us, as the politicians involved in this, absolutely mad that no milestone has been missed. I mean, we have celebrated 500 days to go, 450, 400, 475, 3.5 days to go. There's always been something going on in Trafalgar Square or wherever it is to celebrate some imaginary milestone that almost the entire rest of the population have missed. But the fact is that it has allowed us constantly to show that the project is moving forward and is being seen to move forward. And if at any stage with a project this size, people think momentum has been lost, the thing's getting bogged down, it's losing its way, then you are lost. Because the timescales and what is required to be done are so exacting that it's almost impossible, once you've lost that, to catch it up again. So really maintaining momentum and being seen to do so is crucial to our success. The next thing, the sort of 6th factor I was going to mention, is it's very easy when you're delivering something the size of an Olympics or a Paralympics to forget that it's all about sport. It sounds the most ridiculous thing to say in some ways, but you can turn this into a building project, or there was a stage about a month and a half ago and we looked at it might turn into a security project, or whatever it's going to be. It's very easy to forget that this is, after all, the world's biggest sporting event, and you have to deliver it on that basis. And that means for the home nation that you have to make sure your own team performs, and if necessary, frankly, adjust the competition schedule to make sure that you get an early success. We very nearly messed that up when the road cycling went wrong on the Saturday afternoon. And you may have noticed there was a slightly nervous 3 or 4 days when I picked my Daily Mail up on Wednesday morning and it said, "Where's the gold?" I think had that gone on for much longer, we might have got ourselves into a bit of trouble. It was something we picked up in Vancouver, where the first Canadian gold took a few days to come. You could almost sense that feeling of national anxiety around about this. Was our games really going to work? So do remember, it's all about sport. It's not only about your home team, it's also about keeping all the other athletes happy. If in the age of Twitter and Facebook and all the rest of it, the athletes arrive in the village and they don't like what they see, then that will be all over the world's media in about 5 minutes. So really remembering it's a sports event and keeping the athletes happy is absolutely crucial. And the final thing, and I'm amazed how many people always come back to this in terms of London, is the volunteers. Absolutely the volunteers. I was out in Melbourne for the 2006 Commonwealth Games when I was in opposition. One of the most striking things about it were the large numbers of what looked like semi-retired people sitting in high-visibility vests on street corners, stopping people like me, saying, "Good afternoon, sir. Are you all right? Do you know where you're going? Is everything all right? Do you like a cup of tea? Or do you want to know where the nearest coffee shop is? Or whatever it is. Do you need a stiff drink?" Or whatever it was going to be. Actually, it's extraordinary talking to fellow ministers around the world, how many of them have commented on the work that our volunteers did in London. The atmosphere they created, that sort of friendly, open, welcoming side of it all. If you don't have that, I think it's very, very difficult to deliver a successful Games. We spend a lot of time as ministers at the end of the first week, when we thought they were all getting quite tired, just trying to remember to go around, shake every hand, say well done, keep going for another week. That is really important. The volunteers, in many ways, make or break an event like this. Those were the sort of initial cut, and for what it's worth, I sat down with Locog before coming here this morning to make sure that they were happy with this. Let me just leave you with one thought for any of you that are interested in planning major events. It's sort of nearly over for us, and we all agreed over dinner 2 nights ago that we had woken up to one thing in this whole process above all others. When you lay on an event like this, do not expect, as a government, do not expect anybody at the end of it to come up and be especially grateful to you for doing it. The IOC, the IPC will come into town, they will enjoy you running their event, providing you do it well, and then they will move out of town at the end of it, really without a thank you. And we were all laughing about the fact that the president of the IOC, bless him, can't even bear to say the word government. He always says public authorities. If you go into this thinking that you are going to be the recipient of mass gratitude for what you have done, absolutely forget it. If it goes well, those people responsible for organising it will get the credit. If it goes wrong, you will get the blame. And you might as well open your eyes and accept that right at the beginning. Set against that, as these slightly unconnected slides have, I hope, proved behind me, you do get, through staging major global events, a fantastic opportunity to rebrand the country. And if you look at the press cuttings, and we've just produced a few of them for you here, and we're very conscious of this, reading the press cuttings the morning after the opening ceremony. If you get this right, and it is quite a high-stakes gamble, and that is a fantastic photograph that sort of sums up London. If you get it right, you completely alter, at a stroke, the way the rest of the world thinks about you. If you want, as a country, to go through a rebranding exercise, I can't think of anything better than one of these. And with that, I'll leave it. Thank you very much.
I was going to ask you whether you wanted to carry on standing here for the Q&A or whether we'll... So thank you very much. Gold medal? Gold medal. In fact, world record as well for a sports minister on the back of the Olympic Games. A personal best and a gold medal as well. So it's an opportunity now for you to ask questions. We have 10 minutes, and whilst you're thinking of your questions, we'll need to know your name and the organisation that you represent. There are some ladies with microphones around, I think. Can we? Yes, there they are. So if you can be having your questions ready, show of hands, and I will come to you, hopefully in the order with which I see the hands. But Minister, if I can begin by asking you a question myself. In the Olympic world, we're always looking for intangible legacies that have a long-lasting benefit that perhaps can't be as measurable as bricks and mortar. One of the things you touched on there was the importance of cross-party support. Do you think governments around the world and nations around the world could learn from the power of cross-party support in delivering such a monumental project as this?
The answer to that, John, has to be yes. Indeed, I think actually we can learn a few lessons in this country from it. There are a number of high-profile infrastructure projects that are about to appear in Parliament in the autumn. If we could get everybody to sign up to them right at the beginning, and that would make the delivery of them a great deal easier. I mean, it is particularly important for public infrastructure projects. I really don't think that you can deliver an event of the size of an Olympics or a Paralympic Games without cross-party support, because if the politicians start to squabble, then very quickly the tone of the debate nationally drops. Your press will pick it up very, I mean, they're always out there looking for divisions. So and as soon as that happens, then you lose public support, and the whole thing, you get in one of those sort of frightful spirals. So I think without it, it is almost impossible to deliver it. It's an odd thing to say as a politician, but actually it has been, for us, I think it's been one of the strongest parts of our project. Looking back on it now, if you ask me to name my closest friends in the world of politics, I mean, almost all of them are in the Olympic movement. Tessa Jowell would be one, and I think that tells you a lot about the way we've tried to work it. And I hope she'd give the same answer, by the way.
I'm sure she would. Okay, so do we have our first question there, a familiar face from the Olympic world. Can we have a microphone passed down the line to Chris Daniels?
Chris Daniels from Lloyds Bank. You mentioned about people forgetting about the sport. What you didn't mention, which slightly surprised me, was about medals and the importance of home nation medals, which in my view is a key factor of a successful Games. And I think we were lucky in this country to have had the fruits of sort of 10, 12 years of lottery funding coming through just at the right time, which is pure coincidence. That wasn't because of the Games or anything else, and maybe it continued because of the Games. I'm just wondering, for future sporting events, whether it's Sochi, whether it's Brazil, how do you kind of recreate that medal success, and do you believe that a home country medal success is a crucial factor to a game? So it's a sort of two-part question.
And I'll answer them in reverse, Chris. I mean, if I didn't make it clear that doing well in the medals table was a key part of that when I said that the sport was very important, I'm sorry, because you're absolutely right, it is. It's the sort of point I was trying to make with the Vancouver analogy. It is important to get a gold early and then, of course, to continue to win them. One of the curious aspects of a home Games that makes this more difficult is that you are expected to enter teams in every single sport. So for the Rio Cycle, 28 sports for Brazil. That's quite a challenge for most countries, because very, very few countries around the world are up to Olympic standard in 28 sports. I mean, if I'm honest, in this country of the 26, we're probably up to a sort of reasonable Olympics, or 26 in London, we're probably up to a sort of reasonable Olympic standard in about 20. There'll be a number where we're denied the home place. We won't qualify for Rio. You do have the opportunity. I mean, probably 7 years is tight for investment in elite sport, but it can be done. So you've really got to make a decision when you win a bid that you've really got to recognise that this is a key factor, and then invest accordingly in your structures, in your coaches, and in the athletes themselves. And then you have a reasonable chance of success. If you look at London, there is no doubt that the home advantage did play quite a part. And once we got that first gold medal on the lake at Eton Dorney, thank you, Messrs Glover and Stanning, then it really did open the gates. And I think we knew, I certainly knew as the sports minister, that if we didn't succeed with Cavendish on Saturday afternoon, we were going to have to wait till Wednesday when the rowing started before it was going to lift off. But no, absolutely, it is crucial. Ideally, you need more than 7 years to do this. It took us about a decade to get our system in place here. But actually, if you win a bid and you're starting from scratch, you've got to invest straight away as soon as you win that bid. And then consistency of investment is the key thing, which we have just clearly done for the Rio cycle and will do for the cycle beyond that.
Good, thank you very much. We have one here and then over there next. I think that might be our lot then. Okay, we'll take that one first, then Mike, and then the lady at the back.
Hi. Bobby Said from Emma Media. With regards to the opening ceremony, which always defines the theme of the game and the culture of the game, the fantastic show that Danny Boyle did with regards to this cultural, multicultural history of Britain, defined the country as we know it. Now, the whole idea of the games, as I believe in Singapore, was to project a multicultural games. Do you believe that you successfully achieved that, or could there have been a bit more that you could have done regarding that?
There's always a bit more that you can do, but the fact that you ask the question probably and frame the question the way you do probably tells you that to a large extent we succeeded. And if looking at the international press cuttings the morning after the opening ceremony, and I've put a few of them up on the screen, there is no doubt that internationally people believe that we did succeed in that. So I think yes we did, but I would absolutely recognise in that there's a great deal more that we can do from here.
Okay, thank you. We have two more questions. One from Mike here. So if we bring the mic to Mike, and then the lady behind Mike.
Thank you. Mike Laughlin from SportCal. Hugh, what we've been observing over the last periods of the Olympic Games is that in Athens, the Greece government really didn't follow up after the Games. In China, they have done to some degree. How important now is it for you as UK to take this as the starting point, not the finish? Because this strikes me, it's not the end game. This is the starting point of a whole period.
Absolutely correct, Mike. I mean, some of the appointments that have been made in recent days, in and around the reshuffle, Seb and Paul Dyke most noticeably, are, from my point of view, brilliant news, because you get people like that still involved in the process in the hereafter. You've got a very much better chance of maintaining momentum. I'm confident we'll do it. There are a series of major sports events coming to this country in the years to come. The Rugby League World Cup next year, Triathlon Series, World Rowing Championships, Commonwealth Games in 2014. 2015 is a bumper year. You've got a Rugby World Cup, World Canoeing Championships, World Gymnastics Championships, European Hockey Championships, European Eventing Championships. We're bidding in 26, the track cycling, the European swimming. 2017, you've got the World Athletics Championships, and so it rolls on. Youth Olympics with a bit of luck in 2018, Cricket World Cup in 2019. So there's a lot there to look forward to. That, in terms of major events, will create the momentum. The investments there for the elite athletes. We've finally got the sort of community stuff sorted out with the youth sports strategy and the facilities improvement plan. There's the school games as well. So I think there are, in sporting terms, there's real reasons for optimism. The crucial thing, from my point of view, is that we managed to get the pretty disparate sports landscape united behind this, buying into it, rather than standing outside chipping chunks off it, for which there is a ready market in the press. And there was a perfect example of how that goes wrong if you listen to Sports Week on Sunday, when somebody sort of, that there is always a market for people to come in and criticise that. And if we have too much of it, the thing will drop pretty quickly.
Okay, so we question there.
Hi, my name's Fiona Pelham from Sustainable Events Limited, and I've also chaired ISO 2012-1, which is a new standard that's been created for sustainability within events, inspired by London 2012 and used by them. And my question follows on from the previous question, really, in terms of the fact that across the UK now, we've all learned a lot of new skills from the experience of London 2012. If you were speaking to other events such as Rio or Sochi, what would you be telling them about the export potential that Britain now has based on the experience with London 2012?
I think that the message, I suspect in a way I probably didn't articulate it terribly well in what I said, but I think my first message would be, this is quite a complicated business. I don't think any of us quite realised what we were getting into back in 2005. And it's quite interesting looking at people who came to have a look at London. I saw quite a lot of them from overseas. I saw quite a lot of them at the beginning of the Olympic Games, all very cheerful, glass of in their hand. They had a slightly worried and pained look by the end of 2.5 weeks, because it is such a big event that involves so much. You will only succeed if many of those things that I talked about, you get started early, very clear about who's doing what, and you keep the momentum going, and so on and so forth. Absolutely, the great thing that we have in this country is we are now the repository of recent experience on how to do it and how to make it work. Every Games is, to a certain extent, the sum of those that preceded. All the very best things are those that preceded. And you look at the way that we look back at previous games and how they've done things well when informing decisions in London. We are now the repository of all that experience. And I very much hope that through the great campaign, side of the poster, and a series of things that we'll be doing in the autumn, that we'll build on that and enable British businesses to help others deliver major sporting events.
Okay, thank you. Now, you did kindly agree to take one more question, final one. So, the gentleman with the green tie, if you could be brief, please.
Thank you. Actually, my question follows on from the ladies, and it is actually to do with future business. There was a legacy after Sydney that set the standard, and a lot of the companies, Australian companies, are still making a lot of hay from that. UKTI do a fantastic job promoting British services overseas. On the back of the London Olympics, has the government got any plans to really go out and market Team GB commercial across the world? And can you expand on that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. The Great campaign will run on for a series of years after London 2012, precisely to do that. I was involved in quite a number of the launches that we did pre-games in the 10 major markets around the world. Absolutely, we will go back to all those markets afterwards and probably back again to repeat the exercise. And one of the key things that Seb Coe will be doing for us in the period after the Games, as the most visible public face for it, is leading that campaign.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you, Minister, especially for your giving up so much of your time, being very generous. I know you've got a lot to do with a few days remaining in the Paralympics, so put your hands together. Hugh Robertson, thank you very much indeed.